Peace and blessing, and welcome to Rejoice. We have a very interesting program today. As you know, domestic violence is sweeping our nation, and we have a guest who is a 30-year survivor. She is truly a survivor. She is a struggler, and now she is desirous to not one more go through what she has been through. As a matter of fact, that's the name of her organization, Not One More. I'd like to introduce to you our special guest today, Mrs. Roxie Pearson.
Yes, sir.
Okay, good evening, and welcome to Rejoice.
Hi, how you doing today?
I am blessed, and how about you?
Blessed as well.
Well, you're looking very beautiful today.
Thank you, thank you. He turned your ashes into beauty.
Well, thank you very much. So now, let us talk a little bit about domestic violence, and I know that's something that you can share with our listeners. And tell us a little bit about your organization, and tell us a little bit about you.
Yes, my name is Roxie Pearson, and I am a survivor of domestic violence 30 years. I was married to my attacker for 30 years. This organization, Not One More Domestic Violence Victim, it came from pain into a passion. My passion is to not see not one more woman go through what I went through, as well as some men's also, because men's do experience domestic violence, but more women's. You know, statistics says that one out of every four women will experience domestic violence. So our organization is a 501c3 organization, and our mission, our goal is to bring awareness to as many women as possible.
Matter of fact, this weekend you had a awareness walk.
Yes, sir.
Tell us, and how did that turn out?
Yes, sir. It was very, very, very successful. First of all, we had some wonderful sponsors that believe in our vision, and so they helped supported us. And we had over 150 walkers. And what we did was we walked in silence for those who are suffering in silence, because I know how they feel. I once too was silenced, did not have a voice. So now I'm that voice for them. We walked with purple tape over our mouths, and what that did, that symbolized the silence. And while we walked, we prayed. We prayed that God will unsilence the silence.
Now, is that a combination, when the silence take place, is that a combination of fear, intimidation, hopelessness? Kind of maybe can describe a little bit of that for us.
Yes. I would say, every woman has a different experience, but most of ours are similar in some ways. And one of those ways is fear. We know that it's power and control. A lot of it is hopelessness, embarrassment, and shame. Embarrassment and shame are two key factors besides fear.
Embarrassment and shame. And that's why some of our listeners really do not understand this issue. And some people would probably wonder, 30 years? Mm-hmm. I mean, how could she stay in a relationship for 30 years and be abused? Yes. And we're going to try to get into some of that embarrassment, some of that shame. But is it also sometimes the woman's self-worth has been beaten down to such a point that she don't feel, like she can do anything better than what she's doing, or something of this nature? Yes,
and because most of the time your attacker, your abuser, will put that in your head that nobody else wants you. You're not going to be able to make it out there on your own. What about those kids? Nobody is going to take care of your kids. It's a lot of things that they say to lower your self-esteem.
So there's a lot of psychological abuse that goes on as well.
Mental, yes, sir.
Okay.
Yes.
Now, is there some economic factors sometime where he tried to take any, and when some women, he don't want them to work?
Yes.
It's totally a control thing.
Yes.
But he don't want them to earn any resources on their own. Was that, in your case, was that the case?
Well, some women do experience that, and that is so that they can be totally dependent on the man. And but in my case, I experienced 4 of the 5. There are 5 forms of domestic violence.
Okay.
And it's physical, mental, psychological, sexual, and financially. And I experienced 4, but I did not experience the financial, and that, I believe that's the reason why I stayed so long, because my abuser was he was a great provider. All the other four I experienced to a max. But financially, he was the provider, so he always provided for us, which made me stay because I felt like that if I left, I wouldn't be able to provide for me and my kids.
Right.
Until, that day came where I said enough was enough.
Okay. Now, what signs looking back?
Yes.
Now, because when you look back, you can always get it right.
Yes.
Looking back now, was there any signs in the dating process that now that you can look at, that you can warn others about these signs? And let me ask you another question. This is probably a little personal, and you really don't have to answer it. Sometimes a lot of women get sexually involved with men before they get married.
Yes.
And sometimes because of their sexual involvement, they overlook a lot of things because of that sexual, attachment.
Yes, sir.
Maybe you want to comment on that.
Yes, and I will.
Okay.
Well, one of the things I wanted to say is now that I look back, I do see some of those warning signs. And I recall while we was dating, we went to a party, and he came a little later, and me and my sister was actually standing there waiting for him to come. But it was also some other young men that were standing nearby us who really wasn't paying us any attention. But when he walked up, he thought that they were with us. And so he grabbed my arm he jerked my arm and pulled me to him and told me to come inside. But I didn't pay that any attention. I looked at it as if it was just love, jealousy. And I realized later that love is not jealous. It's to a certain extent that love is jealous, but when it goes to pushing and grabbing and pulling, that's not love at all. And I did not recognize it then, but I do now. And as far as the second question about having sex before marriage and getting all entangled because of your emotions now are in there, I literally can say that my husband was the first guy that I ever slept with. But it do brings an attachment there where you feel like that because you have given yourself up to this person. You feel like that now you're committed to them and you want to be with them, and sometimes it's called a soul tie because you have now tied your soul with that person. And that's another education and empowerment we need to teach our younger generation, is because every time they actually sleep with someone else, they are actually tying their souls with that person, and it causes a lot of problems and a lot of issues. Yes, sir.
Well, the Bible definitely speaks about being bond with someone once that's like a marriage.
Yes.
It takes place, and especially for women, seems to be more of that than sometimes men are. They're caught up in that. Now, when we talk about 30 years,
yes,
are we talking about probably dread, walking on eggshells?
Oh, yes.
We're talking about what can I do today to keep this abuse from happening? Kind of describe that for us, please.
Yes. I can tell you've been doing your homework, and that is so true. The first 7 years of my marriage, and I want to go back as far as I dated him 9 months. He was the best boyfriend besides that one or two incidents where I shared with you where he grabbed on me, but nothing really physical. But that was enough right there. That should have opened my eyes, because you should never allow any type of abuse. And so 3 months after we got married, after the 9 months, is when he hit me the very first time, and it was from a jealousy spurt. And so I saw him go from Dr. Jekyll to Mr. Hyde in 3 months. And the first 7 years was physical abuse. I'm talking about hitting, fighting, punching, running cars into my car, and even to the point to where he pulled a knife on my mother. It was very tormenting. And after 7 years, I thought that it was over. I thought that he was finished. But then it became very verbal and very sexual. To the point where that lasts from 7 to 30 years. And then it became very psychological, to the point to where I really thought that I was going to have a nervous breakdown. And the walking on eggshells it is so true. You do everything you possibly can to keep from upsetting them, to keep from making them angry. You wake up thinking about how can I make the day better, what can I say, and you will even blame yourself sometime when things don't go right. You'll look back and you'll say, what did I say or what did I do? But I'm here to tell anybody, any victim of abuse, it is never your fault. It is 100% the perpetrator's fault.
And a lot of times they do try to reverse that and say that
Yes.
you caused me to do this.
Yes.
Let's maybe deal with the comments that they probably make when they say, well, I love you. Now, some people misunderstand love is because it's Sister Ware used to always say, love is what love does.
Yes.
Now, how do that come over to you, the comments, when someone abusing you and then they say they love you? I mean, what kind of reaction is that when you hear those words?
Well, as far as me, I always knew that the honeymoon, the romance was going to come after the assault. I always knew that. But it becomes like a cycle. It becomes something that you, once you bear assault, you're looking for the honeymoon season, and it's a repeated cycle. And it's something that if you don't research or if you don't hear anybody talking about it, you will begin to think that that's just the way it is. I recall one time that I actually went to one of our pastors, and I asked my pastor. I said, is all marriages like this? I said, well, why is it that God made Adam and Eve in heaven? Why is it that we can't have marriages like he said? He said that a husband is to love his wife like Christ loved the church. God died for us.
That is true.
And so I always be perplexed in my spirit on what is wrong. This is not the way it's supposed to be. But I never saw anybody talking about it. I never saw awareness. The only time I heard anybody talk about domestic violence was the month of October, like now. The whole month, you hear people talking about domestic violence and breast cancer. Well, what about tomorrow? What about November the 1st? What about December the 1st? What about January the 1st, February the 1st? People need to hear and be aware of domestic violence at all times. And I do believe that that's what I was born for. Yes, I went through 30 years of domestic violence. Yes, I was unsilenced, but now I have a voice, and I'm going to use my voice to bring awareness every day of the year, because women need it.
Well, we definitely glad that your voice is here to bring that awareness, because sometimes even in the Christian teaching, some people believe that the man's supposed to subject the woman to abuse.
Yes.
And some brothers say, well, I'm supposed to be head of the family. You can only be head of the family if the woman is in agreement that you can be head of the family.
Yes.
Other than that, you can't. But not one more.
Yes.
I truly agree with you, and we're going to take a short break, and
Yes,
we're
sir.
going to come back, and I know that this is very informative, very interesting, so call your neighbors and call your friends and let them know that we have a program on about domestic violence, and what we are trying to say to the public, let it be not one more.
Five Stones Productions. We specialize in weddings, reunions, church services, conferences, corporate events, and more. Capture those special moments on video with Five Stones Productions. Quality video at an affordable price.
Again, welcome to Rejoice, and we are here with our guests for domestic violence. And this has been very insightful. I know this have not been easy, but I think God has her on a mission to share this, and I know that it's probably painful actually to share some of these memories, but she have been some person that I met previously briefly, and I want her now probably to share with us some of information concerning you finally getting to a point in this relationship that you see that you have to leave. What was going through your mind at that particular time, and maybe you can tell us why you finally came to the conclusion that you had to leave.
Yes, sir. Well, after almost 30 years is when I left on May the 27th. The night before, it was a very horrible experience, and that was a night of sexual torture. And I remember saying, I said, Lord, if you let me wake up in the morning, I said, and when he leave and go to work, I am out of here, and I'm not looking back. But before then, statistics says that every woman that is in a domestic violence relationship will leave and come back 7 times. And I know that to be true because mine may have been more than 7. But I went back, and a lot of mine was learned. I watched my mom go through an abusive relationship.
Okay.
It wasn't physical or anything like that. Hers was more of my dad not providing. And then I watched my grandmother go through it, and hers was the same, as well as the cheating. So I watched this, and it's a cycle. And so domestic violence is a lot of learned. But I knew also from being ministering the gospel myself and listening to the word that sometimes we have to break the cycle. And I was willing to break the cycle no matter what. And so I had also been doing some research. A lot of times women live in domestic violence relationship because they don't know that they are a victim of domestic violence. And I know this to be true. I was living in that situation for a long time. I began to think that that's just the way it is. And then I started doing some research. And after doing some research and looking at a lot of the signs, I was actually a victim of domestic violence. So I realized then that I had to get out. So I made a choice. And so the day that I made the choice to leave, after he went to work, about 3:30 in the morning, about 6 o'clock, I gathered a few things, and me and my son, and I called him over, and we went, and I moved. And I went into a safe place. Yes, sir. I went into a safe place, and there I was in my safe place for almost 30 days. But after those 30 days, he became very angry, and he began to stalk my family. And we all know that right now, he's charged with murdering my sister and her husband.
Oh, so you're telling me that he went to your sister and her husband to try to find out where you were?
Yes. He actually had been stalking my family, and this particular sister had shared with me that he had been stalking her through phone calls and through text messages. And at one time, she told me she had almost 100 calls in one day.
Did she ever call the authority about this?
She did not. She would tell me, but I do remember telling her that she may need to report it to the police. But because, he had been in the family so long, and she never had to be afraid of him, I don't think she took it serious. And he went there basically begging for my whereabouts. This particular sister, me and her, had been hanging out for about 6 months. Actually, I was teaching her the Bible. And I saw God transform her life. But this particular sister just wasn't afraid of him, and just let him in. And she didn't know where I was because I didn't tell her. I only told the one sister who, because everybody that has an exit plan need to let at least one family member or one friend know their exit plan. And this particular sister knew my exit plan.
Now, we're going to talk about your exit plan, but go right ahead.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. So this particular sister of mine, like I say, because me and her had been together a lot, he thought that she knew where I was, and he went there looking for me. Her and her husband told them they didn't know where I was, and he didn't take no for an answer. And according to the police, he's charged with the murder of my sister and her husband.
Oh, boy, it was heartbreaking.
It was and still is.
Yes. And
yes, sir.
Lord have mercy.
Yes,
Now, they say that is the most dangerous time for a person in a domestic abuse relationship, when they get ready to leave.
Yes.
Now, if you was to advise somebody who getting ready to leave, now some people go back, and they go back believing the lies that I'm not going to do this anymore.
Yes.
Now, the abuser can't help himself by himself.
Yes.
He need counseling.
Yes.
He need the Lord, and he need the will to want to change that kind of behavior.
Yes.
All right. Now, but let us talk a little bit about exit plan. People who trying to get away, where can they go? Who can they call? What do they need to do? those kinds of things. Maybe you can inform them about that.
Yes, sir. And because I had worked out a very good strategy. Each time I left, for whatever reason, the Lord provided me with great wisdom with that. He was never able to find me. I left many a times, but I want to say to any victim out there, it is the most careful time of your life that you will ever have to face. You have to be very, very careful. One of the things I want to say is that if you're sure about leaving, let this be the time that you leave and do not return. Because I found out through my own experiences that every time you leave and when you come back, it angers them more, because now they are facing the embarrassment of you leaving them and other people knowing, and they feel like that now you involved other people in their business. And so you have to be very careful with the leaving and the going back, because I do truly believe that if I had came back, that would have been my last time, and evidence proved that, because when I did go back to the house, I know the way that the home should have looked, but there was a lot of changes made in that home that I know that if I had went back, it was going to be my last time. And so I say that to any victim, that if you are planning on leaving, be sure that you are leaving this time for good. Also, make sure of your exit plan. You have a very careful exit plan. Make sure you tell only somebody that you feel that will be loyal to you. You don't want to tell anybody that you feel that they may tell your victim and your abuser. And also, make sure when you leave, you have a place to go. If you have a local shelter, if they're not filled, but before you go, call your local shelter. If they are filled, make sure that you have somewhere else to go. Even if it's in another state, make sure that person know that you're coming. Make sure that you have all your paperwork with you, like social security cards. If you have kids, make sure you have their school records, extra set of car keys. Even before you leave, make sure you got an extra pair of car keys if you can have on the outside of the home. Documentations like marriage license and all the paperwork that you know you're going to need to start a new life. All the paperwork that you know that you're going to need. Have money set aside. If you have a lawyer, family, or friend, give them the money. Even be very careful about using your cell phone, texting, and communicating on your phone. Try to keep that to the minimum. If you can, purchase another cell phone, like a prepaid cell phone. Put some minutes on it. Leave it with a lawyer, family, or friend. The exit plans are very different. If you Google, Dr. Phil even have a domestic violence exit plan. I love the fact that Dr. Phil has a passion for domestic violence. And you can Google him as well. But there are a lot of exit plans for domestic violence victims on that you can Google. That's one of the ways how I was able to exit and be successful at my exit, because I did a lot of research.
Okay, now, are there local people also, counselors, numbers they can call locally to get help as well? Do you have any name?
I do.
Yes.
Yes, sir. You can call the Penelope House, Mackenzie Place, the 15 Place. There are several here in Mobile, but sometimes they are filled as well. When I made my exit, I had a problem with a local shelter as far as getting in, so that's why I had to go to another state, and so I exit out of Mobile. But and also I tell victims that if you are exiting your home, make sure you have the National Domestic Violence Hotline, because if you run into any problems with any local shelters being filled or not being able to get in, or if the criteria don't meet what your standards, then you can have the National Hotline, 1-800-799-SAFE. 1-800-799-SAFE. Also, you can call Not One More Domestic Violence Victim. The number is 251-458-5420. I'm sorry, 251-458-5420. Or you can email us at notonemooredv@gmail.com.
And that's the same number. They can contact you if they would like for you to come out and speak to their groups about domestic violence and that kind of thing, right?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. And I want to say also that I do like a 5-minute skit And what that skit does, it actually draws their attention and keeps their attention. This month, my calendar is almost filled with speaking engagements, but this is what the reason I survived. And so I have made this my mission, made this my life, is to bring awareness to schools and colleges and churches and corporations, anybody that will allow us to come in. We'll come in, we'll demonstrate our 5-minute skit, and then we'll go into bringing awareness and signs and also share my story.
I was at the library one day when you shared a bit of your story, and Mr. Lois, the poet, barefoot poet, did a poem about someone brought me flowers today,
Yes.
and I saw that brought tears to your eyes.
Yes.
And it seemed like the poem was talking about every time he abused me, he would bring me flowers.
Yes.
And you were saying that, each time after abuse, then, the romance would take place after that. And I think the end of the poem, the poem said something about, today I have many flowers. And so the poem was that all those multitude of flowers came when they was burying her.
Yes.
And those was the flowers to her funeral.
Yes.
So I am very glad that God have blessed you with the strength to have the courage that you have to share
Yes, sir.
this abuse, because most people, they are ashamed.
Yes.
And they are reluctant to share that experience because they know a lot of time people just do not understand the psychological entrapment that take place
Yes.
when someone's self-worth is undermined
Yes.
to the point that they actually becomes indoctrinated about whatever your abuser is saying about you. You're not ugly, you're not pretty, you can't survive, who else going to do this? I mean, it's just so much that comes out of that. But I am glad that God spared you and brought you out, and now you are trying to do like Harriet Tubman. You're trying to go back and pull everybody else out.
Yes.
Well, praise the Lord. We are just so grateful to have you today, and we thank our viewing audience for being here, and let it be that you can tell your friends and neighbors about Not One More. This is the Rejoice program. I have been your host for today, and I am truly elated to be here with Rejoice today. So let it be that you continue to rejoice in the Lord, because the Lord is able to help us overcome all that we are confronted with. I'd like to close with peace and blessings, and may God be with you.